Hello, I'm Joe Dillette, owner of the carving shop, and what we're working on is a mantle with a grape design. The type of wood is butternut, very nice wood, almost extinct at this point. And what this video is going to show is, after the basics, to be able to put a grape design or any design on a mantle, the steps in going through that process. So the pattern is all drawn on, so we're going to take it from after the pattern is drawn on to carve the design in, how to texture the background. The first thing is to take the background down to depth. The background is the area between the design. So you have to decide what type of background, how far in you're going to go, and if it's going to be sloped in. This one is sloped in a little bit. It's deeper here than it, and it's shallower at the top and bottom. Or if you're going to have that background straight, or maybe you're going to wrap it around so it looks like it's on the face of a log. But in any case, you don't have to measure the distance from here and be accurate all the way across. It's just an approximation. And so this one here being deeper in the center, I'm going deeper here, and then when I come around here, I start off shallow and I'm starting to go in deeper. Now, because this is deeper here, I don't do that all in one cut. And notice how I'm taking the V tool and I'm making my stop cuts. The other thing you probably can see is I'm not following each of the line exact. I'm doing an approximation, and once I get it down to depth, then I take and cut in and follow the lines. So for instance, here by this grape, I didn't going in here because it just takes too much time. Once I've got the approximate background down, then I can go back in and clean up all these areas right up next to it. Another mistake that carvers make is they kind of want to see the design develop. So before they get the background down, they start contouring the leaves or the rest of the design, the grapes or the vines. And when you start doing that, then you lose your drawing right away. So it is very important when you're taking the background down that you keep the lines straight going in. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So right now, let's keep all the lines there, just work the background down until that background is as deep as it's going to be. Now, one of the things that saves a little time for me is this V tool. Not only can go into the edges and make the stop cut. Again, I'm just approximating, coming up, following right close to the line, but not going in and out of every one of those little lines. But also the V tool can, besides doing the stop cut, I turn it on the side because the V tool has got two straight chisels, and that's how I just split out my material in between. Now that saves the time of going and getting a straight chisel. I can do the same with a straight chisel. Now the straight chisel, or this is a number 3 fishtail, so there's a slight curve, and I could do the same thing here. But by just putting my V tool on the side, it does the same job for me because that's also a straight chisel. One of the things that a traditional carver is taught is not to bury a wing of the tool, and that's exactly what I'm doing. When using the straight chisel part of the V-tool, I am taking one of the wings and I bury it into the wood. The reason why they do not want you to bury any of the wings is because when we talked about the strength of the tool, a carving tool is very strong in the forward direction, but it's quite weak in the prying direction. The grain does not help the way it is constructed, so it's easy to break off either a big chunk or that fine little edge that you have on there for the cutting edge. So for that reason, they say not to bury any of the wings because that tends to put the chisel into the prying mode. But when I'm burying one of the wings of the tool, I am still going in the forward direction. I am very conscious not to do any prying with the tool when that wing is buried. I'm still moving it just straight forward. The other thing is even though we're roughing out, try to keep the carving clean. It gives more of a better feel of where you're going, but it will eliminate a lot of the cleanup later. I am not going right exactly to depth, and you can see maybe this is a little deeper than here. I don't measure each of the areas to make sure it's all the same going across. When I did that at one time, when I started carving, I had a depth gauge, and I would be very accurate, and so everything was down to the same depth, but it looked way too stiff. So when it gives it a little bit of freedom, if some areas you're trying to get it close, but in reality it's not all exactly the same, and that's what tends to give it a little freedom. A little bit of a curve here, that this is a little shallower here, going in a little bit deeper right next to it, and this here curve here I try to keep pretty constant going across, but I don't measure anymore because measurements just make it look too stiff. So you want to have the nice natural flow. So, and even in this rough out stage, I am trying to keep the sides vertical, going right straight in. If you have a taper, then what's going to happen when you start carving the design down, it's going to start widening out on you. Or if you undercut, when you start cutting in, let's say I undercut where this leaf is here, and now I want to curve that leaf down, then that leaf is going to get smaller. So do not undercut, and don't taper it coming out. Go straight in, because that's going to maintain that drawing. The integrity of the design has to be maintained, and that's why all those lines must be straight. And that's why we're doing the background first. The background is pretty well roughed out. Now we have to go in around the shape of the leaves, getting in the detail and getting them down to the background. So one of the things that we do is tool specific carving. So these are V-shaped little details on the leaf here, and a V-tool that has that V shape, you can drive it right in there. Here, let's do that. And I drive it right down to the background. Then I just do a little cleanup cut here on the bottom. So that's tool-specific carving. So it's as easy as taking the tool that matches the shape and creating the detail with that shape. Now, notice the grain is going this direction on the mantle. So I could drive this straight in. The grain is going here, and those points are strong because the grain goes all the way to the end of the point. Now, these points here are coming in the opposite direction. So if I was to drive in straight on these points, what might happen is I would lose the tips of them because that's short grain. The grain is not going to the end, it's coming across this way. So I have to be careful and not take it in one bite, but I got to do it in several. And another way to approach it is to come on an angle and then straighten it up. So I've started, but I've come down on an angle on it. Now I can take it and I can push, and that pushing is less stress than pounding. The shock is what breaks it off. And so here I can maintain those points, and I can take smaller bites. It's less stress on the wood, and I can maintain the integrity of those points. So you have to be mindful of the direction of the grain and not knock off any of the detail, chip them off because of the weakness of the grain. So, and here I'm taking the point now of this leaf and straightening it out. So notice this area here is going straight back. So no matter if I keep the leaf out at this depth or if I carve that leaf almost down to the background, it maintains the same size and the same shape. So now here I'm coming into that one spot there, and then I'm going to shave down with the straight side of the chisel. Now it might have been a little bit faster on this particular cut coming down. This is a number 3 gouge, and it would match that shape very well. So I could come in here also, and that would be more tool specific to that shape. But it's almost as quick to do it with a couple cuts with this rather than reaching for another tool. So there are many ways and different chisels that will get you the right shape. Now, this is a vine, and again, rather than getting the tool specific, I am going to use the straight part of the V-tool, the one wing, and I'm going to trim it straight. So it's going straight in, and I'm right up next to that line. So you see how I'm following the line of the design. Now we get a real tight detail in here and this area, and the V-tool is too wide to get in there. So now I need a different tool. This is a veiner. It's a little short radius on it, and the first thing that I do is I'm going to go in there and I'm going to cut. See how I'm turning it back and forth and how I'm making that round area. So this radius pretty much matches that radius in there, and I know that if I get that down to depth, then it's going to be easier to cut the rest of these lines coming out, because that will serve kind of as my stop cut. So I'm just rotating the chisel. One way I go this way, and then I go 180 degrees to the other way. And long as I've got this tool in my hand, I can do this one also. That'll just save me going back for that tool later. And normally what I would do, in the interest of saving time, long as I've got this tool in my hand, I would do normally several of them in a whole section. But for this video, I'm just going to be doing this one area right now. Okay, so I've got those two down, and let me get this rest of this shape here. So the that is pretty narrow, and the curves pretty much match the number 3. So the number 3 has got a slight curve, so this slight curve coming in, and so I'm going to start working that area down, and I'm not going straight in. What I'm doing is going towards the center, so I'm cutting in like this, so I'm not putting stress on either side. And I'm just trying to get that part down to depth right now. Now the reason why I got this tool is this is the one that is going to be coming across the end here to kind of clean that cut up. So the time-consuming part of this process here is to get into all these areas, these little bitty areas in there. So now you see I'm doing a little bit of prying with the tool for that bottom. It's a little bit too narrow to get the width of that chisel in, but when I pry with the chisel, I'm going backwards. I'm not scooping forward with the chisel. If I was scooping forward, that puts some stress on it. If I'm scooping backwards, it's more of a scraping process. It's just getting the whiskers out and doing a little smoothing to the bottom. Okay, now to clean up this area here, I need a small V-tool to come into this spot right up here, and that will be the next one. So I've got a little smaller V-tool, and that's what I will nibble that right up to that point. Okay, now I just have this little area right in here, and I will do that with the number 3 that I used to come down on this side and come across here. Now here I don't have to take it all the way down to the depth, way down to here. It's creating a shadow, and you won't be able to see the bottom of that anyhow. So if I carve below the depth that I carved, then I can redo that one specific area. Depending on how well you can draw, you can lose part of the drawing and redraw it back in. If you are not very good at drawing, well, then you want to be able to maintain all that drawing before you start rounding everything off. You want to be able to make sure that background is right where it needs to be. So if you lose the drawing, then you're going to go back and you're going to have to redraw that, and your drawing ability might come into play on that. So I recommend that you also practice drawing. Will come in very handy on that. So in this here grapes, in this particular area here, I could take the number 3. This would be again a number 3. I use a number 3 a lot. to go in there, but it's almost just as quick and maybe a little quicker to go in with the V-tool. Now, I don't need a stop cut if I'm going straight up here because the grain is going this way. So you see how this chip is kind of stops right where the chisel stops. So I'm going to come right up to that particular line right there. And then I'll pound it in. And now I will take the V-tool. The V-tool matches this point here pretty well. And I can just knock off this little point here. Now, in roughing out the background, I don't worry about these little spots in between the grapes because when I start rounding the grapes, those are going to be areas not going all the way down. So I am going to keep the whole cluster just coming around the outside, doing the outside perimeter. And again, this V-tool is pretty tool specific. That V shape matches this V pretty well. Coming in there, and then I'm just going to take a cut onto the bottom. So when I'm cutting this bottom, when I drove the tool in, it made a little line right at the bottom, and I need to take it and I lay my V-tool on the side so one of the wings is vertical, so I can do right along the shape of this leaf right here. And I can also, I'm taking and cutting the shape of the leaf, but it's got a guarded edge. I'm not going any deeper because of the curve here, but I'm also cleaning up that little line I made in the bottom. And I will do it on the next little point here. And I will do the same, holding this side vertical. And I will come up again like this. You see how I nibbled in, taking it in several cuts so as not to put too much stress on and break these points off because the grain going this way. I wouldn't need to be as careful if it was these over on this side here because the grain goes right to the end of the point. So now I'm going to come up with the V-tool and I'm going to nibble here at this point because what I need to do now, the tool specific, if I was to take my number 3 and come down and hit it in here, I don't have any stop cuts. So it could split further. So now what I need to do is create the stop cuts. And the V-tool that I have, I'm going to just, again, that grain is short here, so I got to be a little careful with this point. So I'm going to nibble as I just kind of walk it up, taking in smaller cuts and pushing it straight in. And that matches that shape pretty good. Again, that tool-specific carving. So now I'm holding the wings vertical for this side and vertical for this side of the V-tool. And there I get my little cleanup. Now I have to work in here, and I'll do it the same as I did on this side. I'll take that smaller number 3. And again, I will take it in on both sides, not going straight in. I will start coming in from both sides like this. And as I go deeper, then I'll straighten that out. Paying attention to what direction the grain is going. This will be my stop cut here on the bottom. It's going across because I'm just going to take out this. I'm not going to go all the way back to the hole here. I'm going to right to the center section, to this, right to there first. and I'm making sure those sides are going to be straight all the way in. Then I do a little bit of prying again and going in the backwards direction, not scooping with the chisel. I'm coming down and then I'm pulling back like this, going down like that, so I'm not prying with the chisel going in like that. So I'm coming using the back of the chisel. Now the next thing is this here little area here, and I will do it the same way with the same chisel. And again, I don't need to go all the way down to the background in this little bitty area. Just enough to create a shadow and you can't see the bottom anyhow. There. So that's how we did tool-specific carving through this whole area, and we maintained that background depth pretty well. As I'm carving this mantle, we come across these teaching moments, and that's when I turn the video on. In the basics, we were talking about grain direction, and when we were looking at the paintbrush and that. And let me show you here, if you're going in the wrong direction, what tends to happen. And I'm coming right now in the wrong direction, coming up on here where I should be coming down like that. But coming up here, the tendency, and I was hoping we could see it, I was hoping we could be able to see it's splitting in a little bit into this line. Maybe we can see it over here as we coming up here. Okay, here we're seeing it. It's ahead of the chisel, and it's taking out some of the drawing. Where my wing of the V-tool is right on the line, it's taking a chip out beyond that. So I'm going in the wrong direction here, and you can see how it has a tendency to follow in. So when we work showing you the circle in the different directions to go with the chisel to go with the grain, that's what we're talking about. And the same in a place like this. Now, we're always looking at the strength of the wood so we don't break it when we're pounding on it with a chisel. So to do these little curlicues, I know it's going to be stronger if I don't cut the holes out as I'm working the outside. When I get the outside done, the way that I do the holes is I gently go in there with a gouge, and this here's a veiner, and I am going back and forth like this towards the center, so I am not putting any stress on the outside walls. And I will be doing the same here. So when these curlicues are getting delicate, you need to be careful what direction that you're going with the grain with the V-tool. And so remember the circle that we did in the basics when we took the circle and we divided that into 4 areas. And where we want this little vine to be raised out, so we need to go this direction to make the side smooth here. But that is the wrong direction for here. So we need to be coming up in this direction to save this vein. So both of these veins need to be saved, and the area that we're looking at in the inside, we need to go in 2 different directions. From the top of the circle coming down to this side, I need to go in that direction. So I won't break this part out. So the first thing I will do is I will come in this direction up next to there, and now I will go in the opposite direction for that one. Then I come down in this direction for the other side of that vein, that curlicue. And now in here, I need to go in the upward direction, and I need to be careful not to break this part out. So I'm kind of almost driving straight in the upward direction, leaving this part here, and then I'll come around this side and go into there. So as long as I'm not pounding straight in with the chisel like this. If I was to pound straight in, it'd put a lot of stress and it may crack this piece off. So I'm going in the upward direction until I get most of the wood off, and then I will take and make a few cuts, just kind of shaving that down so it's going to be straight. You see, again, this part I wasn't worried about, but that's that splitting I'm telling you about. We're going to lose all this, so that's okay. I don't care that that happened, but I wanted to keep the smooth cut up next to this vine. So coming down this side, I need to go in this direction, and then coming up. Now this little bit of a wave, I am not going to, go in the different directions. Normally I don't. I will take that all in one cut, and I will watch what's happening in front of the chisel. Now when I get here, I want to make sure I'm not going below my stop cut to lose this vine. So now what I'll do is I'll come in again at an angle, not straight in, but at an angle to deepen that stop cut. So now I can do the stop cut again. Now what I'm doing is I'm leaning my chisel over, so I'm going to be taking out some of the stock in here at the same time. Normally what most carvers would do, and it's fine to do that, is take the gouge and cut this area down so you can make your next stop cut deeper. But I'm going to make the next stop cut deeper, and at the same time I'm going to be removing the stock using the same chisel. So I'm laying my V-tool kind of on the side, and it looks a little ugly because it's splitting the wood out. Like I said, the traditional carvers normally don't bury a wing, but I was pounding straight ahead and not prying with the tool, so I felt confident I wasn't going to be breaking my tool. So now I've got this angle going up, and I just need to straighten it going straight in. So, and as I do that, I'm not putting much stress on it at all. And there is my stop cut there. Now I'll come across this way. So many different chisels will make the same cuts. Now here I'm going now in the wrong direction on the grain here, but I'm below the surface. I feel real confident I'm not going to be splitting underneath, and it isn't that severe of an angle. So I feel confident that it won't split out on me. Now to clean this area up, I can take a flat chisel. Again, this number 3, I use it a lot. Number 3s are my most popular chisels here that I like to use. And because I was having difficulty getting in here, in that area, because the V-tool was a little bit too big, I can go in there and I can nibble that out now with this here number 3. And I'm using the corner. This is kind of a fishtail, and that's another reason why I like this chisel. And I'm using that corner almost like a knife just to nibble that area out. And then I can just flip that chip right out of there. And this number 3 sweep on here matches the curve that pretty well, so I can just come right in on the side like that. Once I have my stop cuts, then I can just use my scraping action. Again, I'm going backwards, not scooping in like this. And I can just kind of, those chips were loose, I can just scrape them right out of there. Now I will do the open up that center. So I'm kind of coming in towards the center, not driving straight in, popping that first chip out like that, and then I will just continue to go deeper, and when I get down to depth, then I will straighten the sides out. Now, I'm not really too concerned with the whiskers and that in the background. This background is going to get textured. The texture is going to be carved in, so I'm carving the texture vertically in here, so this whole back surface is going to be cut anyhow. All going to be cut again. So leaving the little whiskers in there doesn't look very pretty while I'm carving, but that's all going to get cleaned up later. We were stressing about it's necessary to go straight in. This area right here on top of that leaf is kind of at an angle, and I had left it like that to kind of show that if you took and carved this leaf down, this area down close to the background, it would follow that and it would expand and make it larger. And that's okay if you want it to be larger, but this lobe on this leaf is large enough, so we need to straighten that out. So the thing that I'm trying to stress here is how critical it is that we go straight in. An angle like that, you have to still realize what's going to happen is it's going to change the design of that leaf. It's going to make this here side bigger as I curl that leaf over. The closer I get to the background, the more it's going to grow going out. So what we do is we take the V-tools and we will straighten that out, so when I do curl that leaf over, it's not going to get bigger. So I'm going to go straight in. So that's, I just can't stress that enough, because that is the common mistake that most carvers make, is they don't go straight in. Then as they start cutting the design and they wonder why it's not looking right. And that's because they lost their drawing. See, now I will keep my drawing because I'm right at the edge, and when I go straight in, as I curl that leaf now, it's going to keep the same size, and right where the lines were is where it's going to stay. So even a slight change like that makes a difference.